From Sunset Beach, Hawaii, weighing 267 pounds, the magnificent Muraco.
Why is it they call him magnificent?
The man who lifts condominiums off his chest.
Anything that's explosive, anything that's exciting, Prince of Darkness, Master of Destruction, perpetrator of violence. Get ready! I'm gonna burn this place down!
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Don Muraco's Magnificent Podcast. I am James, and in the spirit of me doing these intros very quickly, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, donmuraco.com for your website needs and maybe even your merchandise needs as well when eventually everything ships. If you have ordered already, things will ship eventually if you're lucky. And throwing it now to the star of the show, The Rock himself, the Beach Bum, the star, Magnificent Muraco. That was the worst intro yet, Dom.
Star of the show, all right. Yeah, that's a stretch, but yeah.
I'm certainly not the star of the show.
I'll be happy to be a star for a day.
Yeah, you're a star every week here on the Don Muraco Magnificent Podcast. I said it, I don't know, it's like a couple of weeks ago I said this, but I've said we do nothing but talk about beer when we're not on the podcast, when we're just hanging out, which we do. And I'll even show to the main camera. Look, I even got a photo of my Kirin Ichiban when I went to a Japanese restaurant. That is all we talk about, is beer and maybe food. And that's how it goes. But it's always stellar. It's always stellar on Don's part.
No, my memories. I can't even drink anymore. That's why I talk about it.
The fondest of memories.
I used to pound them down. I get beer laying around here. My a cousin was over last weekend, and I was down to like one cold beer in the fridge for him, you know. But, so I gotta go put some beer in my fridge.
I haven't drunk in 5 weeks. Oh,
Boy.
Yeah. I think I've lost like 15 pounds or 20 pounds or something like that, and not in the good way. It's all muscle I've lost. Not that I had much to lose in the first place, but yeah, the first thing.
It'll come right back. You gotta watch out how it comes back too now. Right back to,
I was always the skinny fat ass, if you know what I mean. Always skin, but just like a deli belly sort of thing. So I really have to work hard to get away from that sort of thing, and do it the right way. I'm on a YouTube.
Trying to do some body shaping now.
Yeah,
which is condemned. But you had a weight loss like that, and you want to get back in shape. They probably can can do some ass, stomach, a lot of shoulders, a lot of places.
I've never done creatine before, but I think I'm going to get on the creatine and try all that kind of stuff out. I'm not going to go any more hardcore than that, but I'll try the creatine and see where I get to. Right, okay then, so we've sorted out some audio problems there. But the topic of today's show, and probably next week's show as well, is going to be the AWA. And it's sort of a timely bit of news this, that a very famous actor in America called Ed Asner died. He was very famous in America for the Mary Tyler Moore Show. It was shown here, it wasn't a big deal at all. He's probably more famous for being in Pixar's Up as the old man. He voiced the old man in that. But he's also got a wrestling connection. Aside from the fact he was a friend of Vern Gagne's, he also was the star of The Wrestler, the 1974 version of that. And it was a film that you briefly appeared in. I've not actually seen the film. Did you actually do any filming days, or was it just footage from arenas where you appeared?
A couple dead Billy Robinson throwing me around on some mat, something for a little while. Then they had a big. We're at one of the fitness spas there, and they had all kinds of weight. All these paper, these light weights because Patero's. He could have done it, but it was like 5-6 plates in the thing, and everybody's taking their picture and benching 600-700 pounds, whatever it was. So yeah, but Ed Asner was cool. He was the head of the union actors. He was a union head for a long time.
The Screen Actors Guild, or
yeah. He was the head of their head for a long time. So he had a lot of stroke. Yeah.
Yeah. You remarked to me once that the Land of a Thousand Dances video, filming that was the worst day of your life, like the hardest you ever worked. How hard did you work in the on the wrestler, or was it nowhere near as difficult?
Oh no, nothing. You just show up, hang around. You see, the movies are just exercise in patience. You just shoot this side, shoot that side, do it again, repeat, again and again. So, but that, then they, and we're just little small scenes. I mean, it was mostly Vern, Billy, and a couple of those guys. I think they had Murdoch and Dusty doing some stuff. Ray, a few guys, but just small portion.
Did you ever go and see the film in the cinema? Okay, then.
To this day.
Oh, you've never seen it?
I've never seen it, no.
Well, I know you watch a bit of TV here and there. I don't know if you're a film buff, but in your opinion, what is the greatest film ever that's based on wrestling?
Yeah, there have been...
There've not been that many, I'll grant you. I can give you a few different ones here. There's the other wrestler, the more modern one. A couple of modern ones, Fighting With My Family, Nacho Libre. The one and only with Henry Winkler, Sylvester Stallone, Paradise Alley. Is probably
that one, I think. I think that one. I think that one was the... I don't remember too much, but I know a lot of the boys were in it. I think Ray and Murdoch, a bunch of those guys were in it. With Stallone. I think that was a good one. Stallone's brother sang the thing. I know Stallone's brother. They have a place over in Kauai, and I met him at the Gold's Gym in Los Angeles. He's a pretty good guy.
Yeah, Frank, I believe his name is. It?
Yeah.
So the other question is, what is your favourite film that has a wrestler acting in it? It's not They Live.
Oh, there's good ones now. All the Rocks and Cena. I know what. Cena's done a lot of movies. Baptista, Randy. Probably Rock for the volume. I like Rundown was pretty good. Couple, okay. Stone Cold. Stone Cold I still say he made a mistake. He took that prison guard job on the Longest Yard remake.
Yeah.
All those N bombs he was dropping, it wasn't the first time. He just rolled off his tongue like butter. The guys like Michael Irvin, Dallas Cowboy football player, and all the other guys there. All the I don't think you can wash off that kind of thing. Even if it's a movie, what's his Django. Jamie Foxx, but he can get away with saying it. But I think that was, and he didn't. I don't think he has the charm and the charisma of Rock. But as far as his movies, I think that was a big mistake.
I think
I like Stone Cold.
Yeah, I still say The Condemned. I'm probably the minority, but I love The Condemned. And
Condemned was good.
Yeah, I'll throw mine in. My favorite one, Roadhouse, had Terry Funk in it. That is a great
Terry
film.
Funk. Yeah, that was good. Yeah, Bruce Swayze.
Yeah,
Funk really got bit by the bug there, the movie bug, for a little while. He was down about 195 pounds. Had his hairstyle. He's doing that. I don't. That's when he started all those crazy death matches and barbed wire matches and stuff like that. But he did. He was going. I guess he was getting paid. Must have been getting good money in Japan and stuff. Come up with all that stuff.
Yeah, he was in.
Probably got the book there.
He was in Over the Top as well. I think the arm wrestling one, and I know that Terry Funk was in an episode of Quantum Leap. If you remember Quantum Leap.
Yeah.
Which I loved.
That was a good show.
Yeah, and there was a wrestling. Obviously, it was a wrestling thing, and Terry Funk was the main bad guy in it. And Sam Beckett, Dr. Sam Beckett, goes into the body of a wrestler, and he's trying to figure out what wrestling is and what's the story here. And the promoter said something. All of the undercard matches are fixed, but the main event is real, and that's how they that's apparently how wrestling was dealt with, how they thought it was dealt with in the 50s, apparently.
I missed that one. I don't remember. I remember seeing a lot of the Quantum Leap. I like that thing. He's the NCIS New Orleans or something now, isn't it?
Oh, I can't remember.
Yeah.
I will defer to your greater knowledge on television.
Scott Bakula. Yeah.
I'm still bummed out on the last episode of Quantum Leap. He goes into basically purgatory, or whatever the allegory for purgatory is, and at the end it just goes, Sam Beckett never gets home. The end. I was like, oh, that was a bit of a downer.
That's like The Sopranos, huh?
Yeah, everybody dies, see you later.
Sopranos, the guys walk in the bathroom, end of story. What?
He kind of bummed out that you put like the better part of 6, 7, 8 years into it, and that like it's almost like the Lost thing. It's like, at some point they just can't quite figure out how to end it.
Well, they would have had a comeback if Gandolfino hadn't passed away. Gandolfino hadn't, that was. What are you going to do without Tony Soprano?
Yeah, exactly. What are you going to do without Tony Soprano? He's the
kids and nobody else had killed off the young guy just before that. Billy, Bobby, the one he held in the car wreck and smothered him.
I didn't get that far. I probably should have stopped you before you told me like that everyone dies.
Oh.
Well, I don't need to watch it now. You've saved me a few months worth of watching. Right, I'll carry on then to our main event, as it were, and it is the AWA. It's going to be a two-parter. I've written probably the most questions I've ever written on any of our podcasts ever, and the very first question is, why grow the mustache?
God, I had it forever. I had it when I just broke in with them. I always had that mustache. My wife never saw me till I did a hair versus beard match with Pat Patterson in San Jose a couple years later. So I always had the mustache. I didn't, it was the 60s, the 70s. It was, yeah. It was the 70s.
Did it not just feel like there was just a finger under your nose at all times that you could just feel and you just couldn't quite get rid of?
Didn't bother me at the time, when you're going like I had a beard for a while too, and then now I get a couple of days, a few days growth, and it's. Well, I know it's going to be a pain to shave off anyway. So. Yeah.
And plus, it can be shaved off for a beard versus hair match as well, I suppose. The AWA, the AWA is the first big territory that you were in, that you were there for any amount of time. Who recommended you for the job, or how did you link up with Vern's territory?
Lord Blears, Talio Blears. He was, and Fuji. Vern brought his family. Vern had brought his family to Hawaii for a vacation. Must have been sometime during the winter, sometime during the winter month. And I had just broke in. I'd been a couple 5-6 months in Vancouver, a couple months in LA, and I came back for Christmas and ended up staying. So Vern and Billy Robinson was there with Tally in English, Englishmen together, brother thing. And Tally's the one that started me. So he hooked me up with Billy. Billy needed, I guess, I didn't hang around Billy a lot. And so I, hooked me up with Billy, and Billy helped me, work-wise and stuff. And so Gagne came in. I don't know if he came in to see Billy or came in to meet Billy or whatever and brought his thing. But Gagne came in to maybe, or by the way, or I don't know, somehow that's where Gagne finalized the Billy Robinson deal. I'm sure people known of him before that. I don't know if he wanted to bring him in or what he wanted to do or what I don't know what their interaction or what their business was. But Gagne was there, I assumedly to close the Billy Robinson deal, to bring him in as his number one, number two man with Nick or or was, holding down the heel spot. He wanted him to be the baby face. Hercules Cortez was there, but he was a gimmick. He was a gimmick. Crusher and Vern were always feuding. So and why I don't know, way before my time. But Crusher and Vern were feuding, and Crusher made his thing. So watching Billy work and stuff, Vern must have found him in Japan or stuff. So but Vern must have fallen in love with Robinson's work and is everything. So anyway, long story, keep going. We're at the matches. They had Civic Auditorium, the nightly, a lot of stories in this one card. So Tally Ho, I was up and comer, had not even a year, probably not even a year in the business and in wrestling. So, but Tally Ho booked me with Fuji, and Fuji was a local. He was putting over the guys. So I, went out there. We had a 20-minute Broadway in this ring. It was like as hard as my floor here, and up top rope slams and, the whole 9 yards through. And Fuji led me naturally, and called the thing. And I didn't know, but so I was part of the package deal. I guess I got. He said, "How'd you like to come to Minnesota?" And me never, except going to California and going skiing a few times. I'd never been, been in the snow or nothing, and had no idea what the Midwest of the United States was like. And sure, and I'd heard, from around Canada and from British Columbia and being in LA and stuff. You heard about, the houses in Milwaukee and houses in St. Paul and Chicago and these kind of places, and it was aspiring to get to these places. You're in the Chicago Amphitheater was still active at the time. It still ran that. So yeah, that's kind of the transition. So I didn't break any doors down or anything getting in there. Just tally ho, and I guess I was the 6th round draft pick after Robinson. You don't understand. I'm talking football, man.
No, I totally understand. I do understand that. I do understand that. Was this when you did you take your surfboards to Minnesota?
No.
Oh,
no.
But you did have the VW Passion Wagon, didn't you?
No. Did I? Well, yeah. No, when I was there, I bought the van.
Oh, right. Okay.
I came with no car. I had the. I don't know where I don't know what I did with I had a Bug from Vancouver. I don't know if it was in California or not. I don't remember. With my parents. I think I must have got rid of it. Or they sold it or something.
Yeah.
But I bought a van in the winter here. Not smart.
With the all-weather tires on as well. I'll throw to you this then. Vern Gagne as a boss.
Oh, he wasn't hands-on. I mean, it's one of those big territories, It's a big money, big area, huge population territory. So you don't have to, he I guess he would assert, a bit of over different guys. Like he liked to book me with Larry Henning and have us go through 45 minutes and find out find out if Larry had a hangover or something. And, of course, aside from Larry being sick, he's beating on me for 45 minutes as well, But that, I was young and I could take it. It was a learning, but it's stuff like that. So there's a couple guys that he would, but he wasn't really a tyrant. And I guess he didn't get till Adrian and those guys got. But I was the only young guy there. I was pretty much, there wasn't, aside from ring crew and stuff, well, Greg was breaking in and Flair and those guys, but, I was the only guy close to 20 there.
So, like, if Vern wasn't there, every single day on all the towns, who was sort of his sergeants giving out the finishes?
Carbo. Gee, Carbo was around. I don't know who carried I don't know. Had to be somebody. I don't know who carried the order. I forget who carried the Must have been somebody, like Bastine or somebody working for I don't remember the smaller towns. I remember like Milwaukee or these bigger places, they're Wally Carbo or one of these guys is it wasn't much. And they just, go over in 15, do that, and then click in the end, And all those guys are, really experienced, all seasoned veterans. So nobody really laid anything out unless there was something happening or for a cause. Like I said, it was a big area, so it didn't require that type of hands-on, intellectual, mental, called mental properties. Didn't pull that many teeth because you weren't coming back here, for 6-8 weeks maybe, and you had a whole TV to build it up. So everything was kind of simple.
Vern Gagne is 7 years as champion, over 7 years as champion in his own territory, and you turn up maybe in the second year or third year or whenever it was. I don't believe that Vern was on the road full time, was he? He was fairly intermittent when he'd turn up. He'd turn up for the big cities and, do the main events and everything. Where was he as a performer at this point? And where was he as far as popularity is compared to maybe Nick or Billy Robinson?
He was still over, people still, he kept himself strong. And his selectivity of the matches where he basically wouldn't show up to a Denver or Milwaukee or Chicago or Minneapolis. You wouldn't see him on the road. It was funny, they didn't have they had tag team champions. There was no other belt, was there? There's only the world belt.
I don't think so.
No U.S. champion or no Midwest champion.
I'll look it up while you carry on.
No TV champion or anything like that. So he would just, whatever your angle was, he had Wahoo and Superstar and your tag teams, and then when it was like me and Koloff or Billy and Koloff or different. Heenan was most out of Indianapolis and Chicago for the Bruiser at that time. I guess you had your other guys, Jack Lanza or Crusher or somebody like that. The Crusher was in and out when I first got there. And then Herc died in that car accident. Bastine.
You've already mentioned him, but Wally Carbo, would you see him often? I believe he was the co-owner of the territory with Vern, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was the hands-on, and if you got direction or you got finishes, it'd be from him. Other than that, I guess it was like Bastine or probably later Robinson. I forget. I don't remember. I can't remember who carried the finishes. To the small towns. I mean, there's always somebody, and there are a lot of big towns, but there were quite a few, small. There were high schools and high school gyms and stuff at the time too.
No, like
Rockford,
disused barns or anything like that, like maybe in Nashville.
we did some county fairs and stuff like that, tents and fairs. Yeah.
It's funny, actually. I was going to ask you, the next thing I was going to ask you was a typical loop in the AWA, but it sounds like it wasn't that typical. It wasn't like every town, every week sort of thing.
No, you had, you go up, and it wouldn't even be, there was Moline and there was Rockford, and they were good. Guys were in the trip on the road a lot, You had Moline, Rockford. Then you went down to Milwaukee. Worst year of my life, worst weekend of my life. I had been with Hercules and Bastine in the back of their Mustang all weekend long through North Dakota and stuff, and Grand Forks, and they went up to Winnipeg, and then from there I got in the car with Jack Bentz, who was a real old time wrestler, and he had a little Datsun. And they had me booked from Winnipeg. The next night, I was main event in Omaha, Nebraska. which is like a 600-mile trip. In little Dotson, in the Dotson way. From Omaha, Nebraska, they had me going over to Green Bay, Wisconsin, which is like another 600 the next night. And then by the time, and I got a ride back to Minneapolis with Robinson and a couple guys. And then, I was out of my feet. They told me, you drive, your turn to drive. I said, no. They stopped at some bar on the way. I had 2 or 3 beers. I was out. I don't remember, the trip. I just passed out. God, what a Jack Benz. He's one of these old guys. He was Cowboy Jack Benz. I think he was right post-war. In wrestling. He was a classic guy. We were up in Minnesota, up AWA. Vern brought him in. I don't know why. He was old at the time. Tough, one of these tough old guys. So we were in one of these lakes, up in North Dakota or something. And this lady or a girl had a couple of Doberman pinchers, and Robinson was trying to, make the scene and do that. So they had this real high, giant, 3 triple tower diving board into the lake. So nobody's doing it. And there goes Jack, all the way up to the top. And didn't know he used to be in the circus and stuff. So he gets there, he goes to the back, puts his toes on the edge, and off he goes, like a 2.5 with a twist, and entered perfectly into the water. This guy's he's 50, 60 years old. Everybody's going, wow, all right. But he used to dive, and he was a carny guy and everything. He was a classic guy. Cowboy Jack Benz from Vancouver, British Columbia. What a cool cat he was.
And they were just trying to run you out of the territory, were they? Like with 1,200 miles in a weekend?
No, it just worked out that way. I don't know what it was. But But it was an omen, that's for sure. Oh, my God.
Were you back home quite a lot then with the AWA? Let's say you picked wherever you stayed in one centralized location. How many days a week would you actually spend at what would be a temporary home rather than a hotel?
Oh, gee, you'd come back and forth, where did we wrestle? Minnesota. We'd go out on loops, like to out towards Iowa and there, then up towards North Dakota, out towards Wisconsin, and then down south in Chicago. I don't really remember. It was hard keeping family and divorce there, so it was, wasn't conducive to family life because you were on the road a lot. And late night trips, there were 300-mile road trips. So that's, you're putting time. Duluth, Minnesota, which is only 200 miles. She got an awful snowy at times.
I'll ask a couple more things and I'll move on. As I do with this podcast. Private planes, were you doing the private planes at that point, going from the big cities?
No. Pretty much Denver, occasionally Winnipeg was by air. Pretty much everything else. Chicago, occasionally, there would be loops where you would be on, where you'd go through a hub, Chicago or somewhere, or was it convenient that you took a flight to Moline? Or it wasn't. No, we just spent a lot of time in planes. It was a lot. This is 70s, so this was a lot of autos, early 70s.
With Greg Garnier as the source, he claims that Vern was a very, very, very good payoff man. Is that what you found as well? Because he also said that basically the AWA would just shut down over the summer because they just couldn't draw crowds after May the 1st. Does that ring true? And we compensated well for the times you were on the road.
Yeah, it was good pay. Then again, to repeat myself, you're dealing with massive cities, Chicago, Milwaukee, Green Bay, blah blah blah. So all your towns were, you weren't working the high schools and stuff that you normally did when you're in the South and most of the other territories. You weren't digging like New York. You're going through the week, but you're having you're doing good business during the week, throughout the week. So it wasn't. He was. I have no way to get. I was young and stupid. And, I hadn't been in the business much longer than a year, and I didn't stay there much longer than a year. So it seemed unbelievable. He pulled me aside one time out at the ranch, and he asked me how much you've been making and stuff. I said, oh, "What's your average?" I said, at the time it was like $900 a week, which was in those days was main event money in any other territory. Just to buy $1,000 a week, close to $1,000, but not. I gave him a figure, 900 a week, which was what I had figured out. And he said, "Well, I just had to talk with him." It was out at the ranch when everybody's training, and afterwards, and guys were walking around and stuff. He was, signing out. When I wanted to leave, I said, "I gotta go. I can't handle it here." He said, "What do you want?" "I'll give you this main event with Stevens here in Milwaukee." And I said, "That's not it. I just gotta go." I took off, loaded my van, and went to San Francisco.
And rightly so. Get some sun, get some surfing, man. Who are your first big rivalries, or your first big feud in the AWA?
Ivan Koloff, I think. Ivan and Stan Kowalski. Big K. Because it would... he tripped me and Ivan beat me, pinned me. I get good semi, and Ivan could work with me because I could go all day long, and that's what Ivan did, So being moving all the time, two guys, a lot of action, and it was easy to follow him. I'd come back from Japan. Kowalski told me I don't know what I changed or what happened. But my first trip to Japan, he said my work had completely transformed after that. After going there and being a heel for a couple of weeks and stuff, and I don't know, maybe some kind of light bulb or something went on, where I started selling more, or more convincingly or something. That that he mentioned, I didn't really dawn on me, but I thought about it afterwards, and different things.
Why was he going under the Big K at that point? Was he a mass wrestler?
You're thinking of Killer Kowalski and Stan Kowalski.
Yes, I was. I thought Killer Kowalski.
You got to mix up.
Oh, okay then.
Waldick, whatever his name was, Kowalski, was the Boston Kowalski with Bruno and Vince McMahon Sr. And that he's on that opposite Mount Rushmore with him and Monsoon and all the guys that made Fez and Bruno and all those other guys great. He's one of the guys that got the shit kicked out of him for all those years. Eventually, he was a badass till Bruno got a hold of him, or whatever they had matches. But him and Monsoon and a couple of those guys, they're the heels, the Buddy Colts and those type of, the guys that made them into the legends that they became.
I'll probably I had like two questions then about assuming it was Killer Kowalski, because I even looked it up and it said Killer Kowalski, the Big K, so he must have just been a different Killer Kowalski. But
Stan Kowalski, he was with earlier. He was a hell of a worker. He was just old at the time. Kind of became a part worker, part manager, and he could take a couple bumps good mind in the business. He had been tag team champions with a gentleman named Tiny Mills, someone I never knew, never met. But Kowalski and him had been up there in AWA in the Midwest there, had a big run. And you can see he was a good size, you know. He was about 6'2", 6'3" when I met him. So, you know, and then he must have been close to 6'3", 6'4" when he was, you know, young, and, you know, he'd put on weight naturally, you know. He was older when I first came in there.
Take me back then. So you mentioned Ivan Koloff, and like the most famous story. Did he ever tell you the famous story of when he beat Bruno in the garden?
No, I've heard it. Yeah.
So,
But,
yeah, did you never sort of socialise with it? I suppose you wouldn't have done if you were going against him. Was it just that cut and dry? If you were a good guy and they were a bad guy, you never socialised with them, not even in the locker rooms.
some locker rooms, yeah. Well, they're, you know, yeah. You didn't, yeah, pretty much. You didn't, yeah. Unless you're a wise ass like me or somebody, you know, run away, you know, hang out with Dusty or somebody, you know. Some of those other crazy guys, you know, once in a while, just to get away. But I was all hanging with Wahoo, or, you know, somebody like that, no less crazy. Yeah, but, no, you didn't. You didn't hang out with the heels or nothing.
No. Okay then. I'll move on from that then. And someone who we were speaking about very, very recently. Nick Botwinkle settles into the AWA shortly before you do, and then he's teamed up with Ray Stevens and one of the most legendary tag teams of all time. People say that they were possibly the greatest tag team of all time. What did you make of that pairing?
Yeah, well, you know, great, like Ray and Pat, Ray and Nick. Ray and Pat were, you know, the same. You know, anybody. Well, you know, they both had the idea. They both had the concept. You know, they drew. You know, with the Crusher and Bruiser, a couple 2-3 years they got out of that, and all they were rag dolls. You know, no high spots. The Bruiser wasn't selling. The Crusher wasn't selling. You know, just run them together from here, run them together from there, you know, blind them for a second, and then he comes back and does something else to you, you know. This just, yeah. But the guys that they did work with, like Pat and Ray, you know, they get the heat, the hair, and the, you know, the motions and the quickness and the timing, you know, flawless. They're, you know, two of the greatest workers, period. You know, Bach and Stevens, Bach and Pat, Bach and Stevens, Bach and Ray and Pat. You know, everyone, they're all had similarities. Nobody was in a rush. Everybody had a, you know, clear thought, a clear mind. Nobody was trying to outdo the other guy, or you know, be better, you know, or you know, be better, or be any than the other. You know, and working together as a team, simply.
Yeah. When I'm trying to think, I think it was in 1972. It may have been earlier, but you do your first singles match with Nick, and you've already said in the previous podcast that Nick Botwinkle was one of your absolute favourites, probably before you even got into the business. Is there that sort of intimidation factor where you see somebody on TV and you respect them entirely for their work? Does that sort of like negatively affect you, or do you bring your own game up to match theirs, or like is there an intimidation factor?
No, you know what you're presenting. You know it's coming down. You know what you're there for. It's just, well, I suppose there's a type of, you know, there's a you recognize, you know, that this guy is, you know, like my first match in Hawaii was with King Curtis, ever. You know, first time it was a prelim to a battle royal. And you know, Curtis put me over in about 12 count out, you know, about 12 minutes. Came back to the battle royal. Look, you want to stay here? And I was Hawaii for the next 8 months, and then on to AWA. So, yeah, intimidation, I suppose. So I've been told by other guys, people that work with me on, having the shoe on the other foot have seemed less than, overamped. And then there's been the guys that have been overamped. So I guess it all depends on the individual. There's guys been, I'm working with Muraco, blah, blah, blah. Or, there's like, I was working with Nick, or Curtis or somebody like that. But, you trust you trust their experience and their leadership.
Yeah, you settle in. You settle in quite quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ray Stevens always cited as one of the greatest of all time, and I'm sure you'll concur with that. I mean, you already did on a previous podcast, in fact.
Yeah, right.
You've got to give us a great Ray Stevens story from behind the scenes, because I've heard a couple, they all either always involve orgies or riding a bike naked down the streets or whatever else it could be. Have you got any amusing anecdotes?
Well, Modesto was I wasn't there. I was, but Modesto was a far, one of the desert, the Sacramento, Modesto, Fresno, out in the desert there, and that valley, up the Wine Valley, in Northern California. So Pat used to drive. I guess Ray lived in San Francisco or the city, or Hayward or something like that as well, Oakland, Hayward, something. But they went the same way, going back, and Pat would always. So Pat would leave, and Ray would get in back of him and push and bang his car, and push his car from the back. I didn't think in them when I went through to think of any stories, but Ray was like you say, the naked on the bikes and driving and all that stuff. He was a character. Never paid income tax. He didn't until they finally got him at the end, and he didn't give a damn. Like I said, that's the difference between Ray and Pat. His work was so similar. And Ray just didn't give a rip. Just go in there, and he'd been wrestling, and they both started wrestling in their early teens, and just go and things would just work out where Pat would think about, would be conscious, and that was the only difference, really.
And Pat paid his taxes. That was the other difference.
Yeah.
And we'd be remiss without mentioning Nick Botwinkle and Ray Stevens without mentioning Bobby Heenan. This must be the first place you met Bobby.
Yeah, but I did never that well. He was mostly no. I knew him, but Air Host Hotel after the Masters in Chicago, and a couple of times. But he was with at that time he was with Lanza and Big Jack Mulligan in Indy. He was with the Bruiser. He started with the Bruiser. I think Barnett was the one that he was selling programs or something for Barnett. But that was promoting, and and the Bruiser found him, and the Bruiser abused him for a couple of years, and using the manager and stuff, and he turned into the great that he was.
Was he actually a manager first or a wrestler first? Because there's always conflicting information on that one.
I don't know. Oh, I'm sure probably manager. Because probably wrestler, because they're not going to let. Well, they are. Well, I don't know now. Back in those days, I don't know. Their little Wild Red Berry and Ernie Roth, and a couple of those little guys were managed. They were the managers. So possibly he could have started. I don't know. I don't know. But I would think him as well as he took bumps and as good a worker as he was, probably started as a worker, as a wrestler. He's a small, skinny guy.
Do you remember Bobby's brother Guy Heenan?
No.
Never mind then. Okay, we'll move on from.
Where was he? Was that Indianapolis or?
Yeah, it probably was. He was Guy Mitchell apparently, but he had a fake brother that he wrestled with on occasion.
Oh, Guy Mitchell. Yeah, I'm kind of heavy set.
Yeah.
Mustache. Yeah, he was. I remember him as Guy Mitchell. I didn't know. I didn't know him as Bobby's brother. But he was around a few. Maybe it wasn't until after that he. I don't know. Maybe before that, before he became manager for the two Jacks. I don't know.
Could have been.
I didn't know that they were brothers. Yeah. Wrestling brothers.
Wrestling brothers.
Actually, those are wrestling brothers.
Do you know what? We've got to go on it. I'm hoping for a crazy story here, or maybe 2 or 3, or who knows how many. Mad Dog Vachon. Did you ever? I'm sure you must have wrestled him, or at least shared a ring with him at one point. But
oh yeah,
a terrifying dude. Yeah, go ahead.
He was It was huh? And off he'd go. Headlock. Huh? And boom, chops, everything flying. Everything worked. It was cool though. I met Hawaii. He was over here in Hawaii first. When I was my first run through in Hawaii, he'd come through and his yearly winter break, and he was a heel, and I was like a 200, if that, 20-pound baby face. He beat the snot out of me. Yeah, it was cool. He would sit. He had that big after he'd run, Mad Dog, and he had a cooking show that went throughout Canada. And hello, this is the Mad Dog. Why don't you come do that? So he would go, and after he lost his leg, he got hit by a car. He was jogging in the snow and the ice, and the car hit the ice and hit him, and he lost his leg, so he had a prosthetic leg. So Curtis King he had a beach stand down by the wall in Waikiki. They call it the Whaling Wall. It's where all the kids go to boogie board and stuff. It's a popular place. So the dog would go there on his vacation with his latest bride, and they would take off the leg, and he'd have a pair of wrestling tights, and he'd oil up, and he'd sit on the wall and sit there, and you'd go down. And I was coming back from New York or wherever I was coming back from, and then you go down and you talk to the dog. And, hey, it's wonderful. This just happened. It's beautiful. Yeah, he was always happy guy. And Canadians, because Canadians were at the time did a lot of the visits, especially during the winter time when he was there, because he came from Omaha or Nebraska, and they bought and my dog, bonjour, hello, mon ami, bonjour, and that was it. But that made their vacation. Just walking down, seeing the dog with his leg off, sitting next to him on the Whaling Wall, all covered with suntan oil. He was cool.
There's a really famous story about the Mad Dog where he's on a plane and he's about to. Oh, okay. Then you can take it away if you know what the story is. He
was in back, going through his stuff, and he opened the door of the plane. Right?
Yeah.
I've heard excellent accounts from Gagne and some other guys, and they said, "Oh, it's so cool back here," And then they got he used to always Adonis. Adonis, he gets something in. Vern would, it's just he came back, and now he's top baby face in the territory. Main Crusher and Mad Dog, Crusher and Vern, tag teams and everything else. So Vern would get him after he'd do something like that, and I'm sorry, Vern, Adrian, and Jesse, they get me all fucked up. I can't. So he couldn't. He didn't attempt to, but he throw all the heat on. He throw all the heat on Adonis. Adrian, he gets me all fucked up. I can't. I don't know what I'm doing. Dog, why did you tell him that? Oh, I don't know. I'm sorry.
What about Paul, his brother? I don't really think there's many stories out about Paul. It all seems to be on Maurice.
Well, Paul, great worker. Hell of a head. He didn't rip off guys' ears or pull any eyes out or anything. Sure, he's a pretty tough guy. Great. They were the tag team of their era. They're Crusher and Bruiser and Butcher and Mad Dog. They were over. In the Minnesota AWA, and then brought into Montreal. Any place would book them. Then they split up, and for what reason I don't know, whether family or the office or what it was, but they kind of separated. I worked with Paul in Florida and some other places. He was brilliant, and you can understand him. The dog would just growl at you. Okay, dog, drop down or whatever, keep moving until he was ready to stop. But Paul, Paul was just like being, another talented seasoned worker. The dog was boom, jumping around, so much energy.
Because you mentioned Mad Dog before, pulling eyes out and stuff like that. Did you ever see him, or at least hear the story of him taking someone to town, either in the ring or in the bar or wherever it would be, who tried to test him?
No, never. But it was before my time. Just heard all the stories. Doing a Bobby Jaggers on this, I don't never saw. Every time I saw him, he was like a little pussycat. Of course, you knew better. I mean, you knew better, but he was just a gentleman all the time. In Hawaii, over at Don Lewin's house or up at Curtis's house, where we're on. Well, him and Curtis go back. I think that was the first time King ever turned babyface. Was working with Maurice Mad Dog Vachon here in Hawaii. He turned Curtis was like 375 or something like that. It's huge. Mad Dog was before. I think it was before he had he hit big in the AWA. It was long ago. I was long, quite a while. Because I was young. I remember dog around here. Him and Curtis. Curtis was off. Curtis put him over real big. Switched him heel and stuff. Well, Curtis was the top heel. So Curtis switched him because he was going. It was time for him and Mark to go back to Australia. So I think it was by the time they're taking Abby with them from Detroit. From Sheik and Lewin were always tight, and that's another territory that Mark tried to steal was Detroit. So, the Sheik and Mark, Mark always talked about how great the Sheik was. Curtis and Mark were together, but yeah, Curtis, he was the big heel. He was the top heel around here in Hawaii, in the world, wherever he went actually. And Dog came in, I don't know, recuperating or heel or coming back from Japan. What it was, waiting before he went back to Minnesota, and Curtis switched on him and turned Dog the heel, and Curtis the babyface, and Curtis took off for Australia.
Well, I'll move on. And the AWA in the early 70s, do you know what Vern's relationship was with other territories at the time? Because I've written down that he had favourable relationships with Houston, Memphis, San Antonio, probably in Indianapolis as well, because he did seem to trade talent here and there. But were you never offered to be farmed out here or there, because they had favourable relationships with other territories?
If I probably would have been hung around, I would have slipped into Indianapolis, or I don't. Snyder and the Bruiser at Indianapolis. I think they got it from Jim. He didn't have the Sheik Detroit. I don't think, and he was kind of sucking up everything Detroit, Ohio, that area there. Down to I know Joe Dusick but he was no threat to the Dusiks, and it was just, as a part-time. Joe Dusick was running the Nebraska, a little bit of Iowa, and Vern was into Iowa. So he was close with Joe, because I know I got farmed out to Joe a couple times. And then Joe Blanchard was San Antonio, and Paul Bosch got along with everybody. Paul Bosch was just, he was just a gentleman and a businessman, and just one of the class acts of the promoters, at the time. People talking, you do a lot of asshole things when you're working, and you look back and you're an ass. But they forget, we were at war. It was always a war. They were just stepping on the talent. They were always putting the talent. And a couple guys that could break through. So San Antonio with the Blanchard and Paul Bosch. So I don't think he had a relationship with Fritz now, because Fritz was a big time star as well. That Chicago Amphitheater TV, where Vern got where he got Vern and Thez and that Buddy Rogers and all those belt splits, all those belt story, and Pat O'Connor, Vern, Rogers, Thez. So those four, you need wrestling historians to unravel that story, because there's all kinds of stuff in there.
Yeah,
it would be interesting to.
That you'll know obviously that a few years earlier that the AWA secedes from the NWA, and why wasn't the AWA considered like an outlaw promotion to the NWA, and people trying to blacklist anybody who wrestled for the AWA, and they couldn't go to the NWA? How come there was none of that? How come the NWA sort of accepted the AWA?
Too many, there was Bob Geigel and Leroy McGurk in Kansas City, Oklahoma. And the whole Midwest was all. You had Vern going down to Omaha from Omaha to Geigel and his partner, and then later to Leroy McGurk and Watts, and then to Bosch, and then the Von Erichs were standoff office a bitch, because they had their family and their stuff. So, you had that little corridor running down from Winnipeg all the way down to San Antonio. So there's so much talent there. And then on the other side, running down, including Indianapolis, and Bruiser was into Detroit for a while. I think Bruiser had a part of Detroit. I don't think, for some reason, I don't know. I don't think, don't remember if Vern had a lot going on with Detroit and the Sheik's, program. But, running down that corridor, down Indianapolis, and then below Indianapolis, then you start running to the NWA guys. Then the NWA was Michael Bell, whatever he wanted to be. And then eventually it's up north, Don Owens and the Shires. And they both, rich men, they could have been, so that it was more convenient for them, I suppose, and more accessible for them using the NWA champion and being affiliated with the NWA. The NWA ran pretty much down from Washington, D.C., down like Virginia, Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, and then they into Louisiana, and then they used the NWA, but they were friends with Vern, so I don't think anybody was getting blacklisted. He was hooked up, and it's not like Vern, like Vince is, where he just wants to cut your throat and pull your heart out and eat it, But it wasn't like that. Obviously they're promoters and their egos are pretty stiff. So, but they were able to. See, the South had their own. The Fullers and the Gossett, the Grahams, Eddie Gossett and Graham Fullers. Fullers were there. Welch's, Fullers. There's several families, and then the Tennessee Jarretts, Nick Goulas, and Buddy Fuller was back all the way from Florida, all the way to Mobile into Tennessee. So the Fullers, and nobody ever talks about the Fullers pretty much a lot of times, but the Fullers carried a lot of weight in the South there, even through Georgia. And, with Gunkel, it was Gunkel before he died, then the wife, and then the NWA and stuff. They had a little war there. But, there was no blackballing, really, so to speak. The guys that went off, Ike Koloff, and a couple of guys that broke off into that IWA, Eddie Ironhorn thing. I suppose that's why Ivan is, and a couple of guys are blacklisted from. I don't know what he did to Vince. I don't know what happened, because if there's, ever a Hall of Famer, good God, as far as heels or he's I don't know if there's I like Ray and I like Junior, but you can't find an argument to say Koloff wasn't one of the greatest heels of all time. I don't think there's going to be a lot of people who stand up to you and argue that point, because it's certainly not true. I mean, it certainly is true that he was, especially when he was like 300 pounds, taking those turnbuckles, backdrops for Bruno, stuff like that, the way he used to move, Vince finds a thing, Vince finds maybe what he did to the old man, maybe he did something to Vince Sr., or maybe he did something to Vince Jr., because I know that, Vince gets one for you. It doesn't go down, It just stayed. Like she gets hard. She gets hard. But I don't put him over.
That's the Bobby Heenan video. If yes, search for that on YouTube.
Yeah.
Bobby,
I'm not going to give you everything for free.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not even going to link it to you. You have to find it yourself. I'll do a few more, and then we'll sort of cut this podcast down, and then we'll save the rest for the second half. I'll mention this briefly. So in the AWA, you get there, and then within like a couple of months, they lose two of their stars. So there's Alberto Torres, who suffered internal injuries in a match a few days earlier and died. And then Hercules Cortez, who I think you mentioned earlier on, and he died in an automobile accident. Do you have memories of either of them? And surely that must slightly put you off being in the AWA territory when two of the stars managed to sort of drop within weeks of each other.
Alberto Torres was a star out of Omaha. He was working the Omaha territory, and he was working with the Tom Andrews, Ox Baker, and Ox Baker was involved in that. It was Tom Andrews and Ox Baker when he had his stomach erupted and ended up a heart attack or something like that. So, excuse me, the brother Ramon came in and they used him, and people at the time thought it was poor taste. And some people did, some people didn't. I didn't have much of an opinion. I ended up tagging with the brother Ramon came in to work against Ox and to work against the Claw in Omaha and around the Nebraska territory. So he worked a short time, and then from there, I guess his deal was he got shuttled over to Vern, and he came into AWA, and he and I became tag partners for quite some when I first got in the territory. And he was a fun guy, cool guy, Spanish, Mexican. They used to, for Pupa hors d'oeuvres, he'd have jalapeno peppers with the beer. I took a bite. I was hiccuping for the next 2 hours.
Was he a brother, or was he a brother like Guy?
No,
like
brother.
Guy Heenan?
Brother.
Oh, his actual brother.
Alberto, I think he's the one that stole. He stole Archie Goldie's wife, the Stomper's wife. I heard. Yeah, he ran away with the Stomper's wife. But those are under the sheets, rumors.
Yeah, we
not
will.
rumors. I'm pretty sure it's fact.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's dead now, so Nobody gives a shit. But yeah, he's the one.
We can say the rumors if everyone's dead. That's the rule, I think.
Yeah. It's got to be true. He said it here.
I'll give you a couple more and then we will shut it down. You mentioned also Larry Hennig. He was one of the first big stars you faced in the AWA. Larry Hennig memories, and you also mentioned he just absolutely killed you in those 45-minute double time limit draws. Memories of Larry.
Big bruiser of a man. He was, especially as a 220-pound baby face, He was funny. He and Lars Anderson were the tag champions. And what a team. What a worker Lars was. Before he got that Johnny, Lars was fabulous. He was just he was 6'2 plus 6'3", 265-pound, not a body, just like an offensive, that was the size and just a rugged, mean, good-looking, solid heel, good worker, great worker. So he and Larry were, but Larry is he did the same thing to Harley. He'd have, I hook you and I've got you, and here comes, Larry's gonna, lay one of those big forearms across it, and you duck and get out of the way, and I'd hook you, and he'd go, Don, this is gonna hurt, and you duck and bang, He used to do that to Harley, and then Lars. He said, Lars, this is gonna hurt. He would be funny. Guys would be mad and talking, and he'd just show a face and storm out of the room and come back. He says, "Yep, I just did it. I just gave Gagne my 20-year notice." He wasn't going nowhere, and Gagne couldn't get him out either. I guess him and Vern were friends. I don't know. They always, tell to each other. They never had a kind word to say about one another in front of anybody, or in front of me anyway. Yeah, so other guys, they must have known what was going on.
Did any of the old timers, like the long time AWA wrestlers, have anything nice to say to Vern? Because you said the Crusher didn't like him, Larry Hennig didn't like him. Did Vern get on with anyone after like a certain amount of time?
They were promoters. They were dictators. They were tyrants at the time. Come on. Bruno, your champion, your star, made you millions of dollars. You won't give him Pittsburgh. You won't give him the towns around Pittsburgh. He hates you for that. That's his chance to become. No, it's all mine. It's going to stay mine. I'm not doing any. I'm making. And guys get pissed off without that they come in and. They were stars for 2, 3, 5 years, and that's they think fucking Vince is supposed to take care of them for the rest of their life. That's why people hate McMahon, and of course what he's done to wrestling and the things he's done. But they have the opinion that once you retire, and some people should. A lot of guys go into agents. I heard Tony Gurria on the agents and stuff. But they want to. They want to further their career. Everybody sees their career ending, and not everyone wants to become a longshoreman. They see see that wrestling, and they see the opportunity. The longer you're around, the smarter you become as far as promotion and selling. The 50-50 raffles at halftime and selling programs and T-shirts, and of course what it's blossomed off to with the WWF taking over. But, if you're around 15, 20 years around the business, you see that growth and the different potentials. If you only have a couple little towns, if you're not able to do that, then that's, but no, they don't want to, they don't want to share. It's my country, it's my area, and you can't have any. That was a mentality back then. You change it, and you think, why did this happen? Or why was this guy, an asshole? And why did he run out on this, and why did he leave that? And it's you got Ole Anderson and these guys, calling you, and you're running your family someplace, and you get to running all over, no respect, just do it because you're a low life, stuff like that. They hated you. They were down on you. You were dirt. You were a wrestler, and they were promotion. You were dirt.
A couple of them made the transition. I think Jerry Lawler did, didn't he?
Sure. Yeah.
Bill Watts, he did. Well, I think he just bought the territory, didn't he? He didn't really...
No, he stole it from Leroy McGurk.
Oh, okay then.
I don't know. Well, Leroy was blind, and
he was easy to steal from him then, I suppose, if he was blind.
Oh yeah, blind. That's they said, but Bill was a smart guy. He used to do everybody's homework for him. The University of Oklahoma football team. He was intelligent man, great Finnish guy.
Just before we get off Larry, his son Kurt, I know you're obviously Mr. Perfect in the WWF. Any similarities between the two at all as far as wrestling? Because one's like a big bruise and the other one's a technical bumping machine.
God. No. No. Kurt spent his time, when his first run through, he was around Martell, and he was in Connecticut. My wife and we'd babysit Joe, who was the guy? Axel Rock?
Yeah, Curtis Axel, I think he was at one point.
Curtis Axel, yeah.
Yeah.
We had him when he was like, they were newlywed. I wasn't even married yet. My wife now, Sharon. But yeah, he was around and he'd work out with us, and he was a good kid. Then could see potential. He had bad knees. That's why he wasn't. That's why he wasn't a college, a great college athlete, a great football player or basketball. He was talented, in all aspects, but he had a couple bum. I don't know one or. I know he had one bum knee for sure, but he had a bad knee, maybe two. Great athlete, great attitude, smart, and learned promos, learned everything. He went around. He gathered all the information he could, around being in the WWF at the time. He was living up in Connecticut up there with us, and Angelo Mosca, and those kind of guys, George Steele, and all those guys. He was learning from just a cast of characters. So he took all those characters to Minnesota, developed himself into a fine baby face, still growing, still learning. I guess he had all those, George Steele and Mosca and Sergeant Slaughter, all those other guys, Pat Patterson, all those other guys still, still current in his mind. And he came into WWE just perfect. He was good, he was, I guess, he was rascal. He got in trouble for, I don't know what, he got let go here, let go there. He was always fooling around. He would have been back. He would have been a big star, had he not passed away. When just a matter of time till somebody picked him up again and put some belt on him. He was, guys, he was money. He was, there were dollar signs all over that kid. So, he wouldn't be out of a job for long.
Did he ever catch you in a rib?
No. He was apprentice. He was Fuji's apprentice. They did a real nut to Pat Patterson, and I wasn't there again, but I heard, and then Patterson confirmed it. Said, thanks a lot for the point. Thanks a lot for the camera. But evidently they got Patterson was taking were they Kuwait or UAE or maybe another European trip. So Patterson was taking snapshots of. So they got a hold of his camera and they dropped their pants and they bent over and got as close as they could, and snapped off a couple, half a dozen pictures apiece, and put the camera back in the case, never knowing that it had been stolen or had been borrowed. And when Pat got the pictures, he obviously knew who it was right away. And Fuji and Kurt had blowing him kisses.
Oh, God. I would end it there, but I want to ask one more. I know we've got to end on a high, and I'm not sure how much better.
I thought that was pretty funny.
I'm not sure how much better we're going to get on that, but I've got to ask you one more. And if we're not going to listen, we'll do another one. Is the AWA where you learned to cut a promo, and you've got to talk about Mean Gene Okerlund, the man who
wasn't there?
What was he
No.
not? He's
No.
Oh dear.
No, I was left there as a baby face. Left there. I heard the God was Byrne was trying to get me down to the TV to stretch me on TV before I left, but I wasn't gone. I was out. I had a girlfriend, and I was in Minnesota, and there had no cell phones or no phones or anything. So I wasn't. I never made it back home. My wife had left me for San Francisco. So I never heard, but Mean Gene wasn't there. No, I did a couple promos, but never amounted to nothing. It wasn't until I went there in San Francisco, I started doing some, and then Florida, where I started cutting promos. But I was still a baby face. Then back to Frisco, then back to Australia. I was in Australia for a couple of years. And that was around King Curtis. And, I'd grown up around guys that were the best in the business at the time. All the Pipers and the Jake the Snakes. Curtis, Ripper Collins, Johnny Moran, all the talent used to come through from Japan and Australia and Hawaii. So it wasn't like I didn't. It wasn't, I didn't access to guys that knew how to talk and stuff.
I got bad information then on Mean Gene. I'll move on. I'll ask a couple more. Greg Gagne starts wrestling in 1972. Where does Greg rank in the all-time nepotism list of sons of wrestlers who are pushed in their father's territories?
He never put on weight. That's luckily. How many people can you say that about? He probably could have bulked up and looked more the part. Done some got to the gym and got a little testosterone going in him. But I wasn't around when they were training, and he never squealed on me. He was a good guy because I used to come. I used to go to the farm there when those guys were working out, and when Robinson didn't have to leave or Robinson was gone, I wasn't going to stretch the Sheik or Patera, any of those guys, So we would start headlock, tackle, drop down, hip toss. Then we'd go through sequences, high spot sequences. So they loved me, I wasn't. And most of the time I was just running and training with them. I didn't take the beatings and stuff that they did. That because they were students. So I was standing on the side. Probably they'd probably like to give me a beating. they're there dying. They probably wanted. But I wasn't a wise ass. I was I hung with Patera. I used to hang with Patera and Flair a little bit. Flair wasn't around. Gagne, Greg, and Brunsey. Brunsey and I were friends. Yeah, we're all a good crew, good guys. And later the two Dennises, Bachwinkle and Stamp.
Okay, then. Could Greg actually work?
Yeah. Good worker. Or, he was Gagne's son, so, nobody, nobody's going to put him over. No, nobody's going to say you're one of the all-time greatest or anything. No, he's a good worker. I watched him. Never worked with him a lot, but I've seen their matches. I've seen, and no Brunsey and stuff, Yeah. He didn't try to steal the thing as in the tags, the ones I saw. I never heard anybody, Adonis or any of the guys who worked with him, Jesse, or I was never close to Jesse, but Adonis or any of those other guys that had worked a lot with Greg. I never heard him, never heard a bad word about him.
Yeah.
Like Mike Graham, Greg was skinny, Mike was short. That was their flaws. That was their flaws in the business. Greg never bulked up till he had the height, but he didn't have the width. And Mike was thick, but he didn't have the height that that your majority would put over. There's still a lot of old timers still hanging in the business, and still a lot of places you had to go, a lot of territories and stuff you had to go around to. So everybody didn't have a bouquet of roses for you when you came in the door.
It's a shame they never had a tag team of Skinny and Short.
Yeah.
Greg and Mike, that would have been a surefire hit.
Skinny and Shirt's promoter sons. Both. I don't know Greg's mind. I've heard him talk, and he seems intelligent. But I know Mike Graham was. I know Mike Graham was sharp, and inherited a lot of his father's acumen for finishes and programs and how to wrestle and how to But he was around. He was around Briscoe, and Valentine, and his old man. All these guys. It's a shame. He called me out of the blue. On my phone rang. I Gossett. I only knew one Gossett, and Graham. So I asked, hey, this is how you doing? I hadn't spoken to him in years. He said, how you doing? Blah blah blah. I'm doing a radio interview. I don't think it was even podcast. It was just it was a week before he passed, and he booked me for that Monday or that Tuesday, after he'd gone up to Daytona and took his life. He booked me to be his guest on that show. I don't know. And we sat, we talked and stuff about Florida and our times in Florida and the times that he opened the bar. And I got along. He was a good head. Like I said, he wasn't a spoiled brat or anything. He was, but not not to us, not the boys. He had boats and cars, and light up watches and all kinds of stuff. But but he wasn't. He was cool. He was cool as far as he didn't press it or didn't hang out too much. So, but he owned a bar. He opened a bar in Tampa. So he was a pretty cool guy, as Greg was.
We'll end on this one then. And you mentioned him before, and you said you hung out with him. Any stories about Jim Brunzell that you can share?
No. No. We went a few nights out. We went out a few nights. He's a pretty quiet guy. He wasn't, but he had his. I guess he had his moments too. I suppose. None that I broadcast or go over, or that I know of. That I know. That he. When he was all around me, it was pretty cool.
Okay, then. That's the most mysterious ending to a podcast I think we could ever ask for. So I'll shut it down now. We've been Tales of the Unexpected.
Tune in next time. I'll tell you all the dirt about Jumping Jim Brunzell.
We should do as well. We should actually do a cliffhanger on one of these shows. That wouldn't be a bad idea. All the dirt that you're not going to hear about. Right, so...
Boy, that would get me divorced in a minute.
Oh, right, okay then. Oh, yeah, maybe. Right, let's keep that one. Right, no Jim Brunzell stories ever. Not on this podcast, ever. Right.
Maybe.
Oh, all right, I'll give you a couple of weeks to think about it and just edit yourself out of all of them somehow.
All right.
All right then. Okay, I'll thank you, Don, once again for joining us. Thank you once again for joining us as well. We will catch you next week, and from Manchester, where I am, and Hawaii, somewhere undetermined in Hawaii, because he doesn't want to give his address away and more people hang out and steal cards out of his letterbox or mailbox.
One time I got caught.
Yeah, one time he got caught, and it will never happen again. So this is an outro, and I'm closing this podcast down. Goodbye. Thank you.
Oh, no law.
Bye.